Have you ever had a feeling, maybe a deep, bone-level anxiety that you just can't logically trace back to anything you've actually experienced?
Hmm.
Like, you could be financially totally secure, but you're hoarding money like the Great Depression is just around the corner.
Or that chronic, heavy feeling of guilt, even when you haven't done anything wrong.
Exactly.
That experience is, it's profoundly common. And it's a huge signal that you might be carrying something that doesn't actually belong to you.
Something that isn't yours.
Right. We're talking about the emotional and psychological residue from the past. The pain, the fear, the survival strategies, they get passed down the family line.
So this is what people call transgenerational trauma.
Transgenerational trauma, emotional inheritance. There are a few names for it. But it's like a ghost in the machine of your nervous system,
Yeah.
It affects you before you even have conscious memories.
It's like you've been handed the emotional instruction manual for a crisis that happened 2 generations before you were even born.
That's a great way to put it.
So in our deep dive today, we're going to unpack the architecture of that inherited fear. We'll look at the science of how it's transmitted biologically and through family dynamics.
And most importantly, we'll explore some practical, targeted ways you can finally identify and maybe release some of this heavy inherited weight.
Okay, so this is where we need to get practical. For anyone listening right now, how can you tell if a fear is truly yours or if you're carrying a family narrative?
Yeah.
What are the clues that point toward an ancestral origin?
Right, so we look for patterns of intensity and a lack of context. The first major criterion is a fear that's completely unrelated to your own life experience.
Okay.
The emotional intensity is huge, but doesn't line up with what you've actually lived through. An extreme paralyzing fear of abandonment. If you had a really stable upbringing, but the mere thought of being left alone sends you into a panic. That level of fear is often rooted in, a real story that happened in the home before you were born.
So the body is remembering a crisis that the conscious mind never actually lived.
It is. Your body remembers. That scarcity idea you mentioned is a perfect example. You have access to resources, you're fine. But you feel this physical panic over a minor financial dip.
And the second clue?
A disproportionate reaction. This one is huge.
I think I know what you mean.
If you make a small mistake at work, and your internal response is this full-blown terror of being fired, going bankrupt, being ostracized.
But the reaction is a 10 when the situation is a 2.
Exactly. Your emotional response is way more severe than the present situation calls for. You're operating from a state of hypervigilance.
Hypervigilance. I love that term. It sounds like my nervous system is just stuck on the highest possible alert setting.
That's it.
Just waiting for a predator that hasn't shown up in 50 years.
That is precisely it. Your nervous system is reacting to your safe, modern world as if it were the dangerous world your ancestors had to navigate. It learned from their signals that the world is fundamentally unsafe.
And I'm guessing that inherited hyper-alertness leads to the third clue.
It does.
Yeah.
Which is what we call emotional stuckness.
This is where people get so frustrated, right? They've done the self-work, they've gone to therapy.
Yes.
They know cognitively that they're safe, but the feeling just won't go away.
Precisely. If you've spent years working on yourself, but you still feel trapped in the same loop, chronic anxiety, self-sabotage, whatever it is, it suggests there's an unseen influence at play.
You're carrying, what, unprocessed emotions from the past?
Unprocessed emotions, past wounds. The subconscious is holding on to them on behalf of the whole lineage. And this feeling, it's not just anxiety, it's a burden. That's the fourth clue.
A burden, that persistent feeling of responsibility or this deep grief that doesn't have a clear reason.
Yes, it feels heavy, not just emotional. And that persistence is what keeps the inherited fear loop running just below the surface, because the subconscious mind is constantly firing danger signals to your nervous system. You are carrying a weight that previous generations just couldn't process.
Okay, so to release that weight, we first have to understand how it was even passed down.
We do. And it happens through 2 big interconnected systems. There's the biological blueprint, the physical hardware, you can say, and then the psychosocial legacy, which is like the relational software.
Let's start with the biology. This is where the science of epigenetics comes in, which I have to say sounds technical, but it's one of the most fascinating concepts in this entire field.
It truly is. So think of your DNA as the fixed computer hardware. It's the basic code.
Right, it doesn't change.
It doesn't change, but the trauma of previous generations, it applies these tiny chemical tags. It's called DNA methylation. And these tags act as a recorder of environmental stress.
So they're like little sticky notes on the genes.
Perfect analogy. They're sticky notes that modify the software, They tell specific genes to turn the volume way up or way down.
So the body adapts to extreme stress by handing the next generation a pre-tuned stress machine.
Exactly. And this specifically affects the genes that regulate what's called the HPA axis.
Yeah.
You can just think of that as your body's central stress thermostat. Genes like FKBP5 get modified, and that alters the sensitivity of your entire system. Research shows this all the time in descendants of major trauma survivors. They find these alterations, suggesting a biological presensitization to threat.
So if my great-grandmother was living through, say, severe chronic deprivation, my stress thermostat might be set way lower than average.
That's it.
So I react to minor annoyances as if they're life-threatening.
That's the biological cost. And the timing of the stress matters a lot. Prenatal exposure to severe maternal stress like experiencing famine or war while pregnant profoundly alters the developing fetal HPA axis.
The stress hormones are literally traveling through the umbilical cord.
They are, and they influence the child's neurodevelopment, which leads to a heightened vulnerability to anxiety, PTSD, and depression later in life.
What about fathers? It seems like this biological pathway is so focused on the mother's experience since the baby is physically inside her.
Well, the maternal impact is definitely clearer because of that direct hormonal transfer. But paternal trauma has also been shown to impact offspring.
How does that work?
Research suggests it's mediated through changes in the father's sperm, specifically through something called microRNAs, which are these tiny bits of genetic material that can influence gene expression in the embryo.
That's incredible.
It's complex, but the main takeaway is that both maternal and paternal experiences can physically alter the next generation's stress regulation system.
So that's the hardwiring. Let's switch gears to the relational side, the emotional inheritance. How does the family system pass on trauma without biology?
This happens through behavior and the emotional environment. So when a caregiver is dealing with their own unresolved trauma, say their own deep unhealed grief, they often struggle with emotional regulation.
Or they're just not emotionally available.
Exactly. And this naturally leads to what we call attachment disruption. The child develops an insecure attachment style, anxious, avoidant, disorganized, because their core need for consistent safety just wasn't met.
And that insecure attachment becomes the blueprint for all their adult relationships.
It does. It often confirms the very inherited fear they started with. It's a cycle.
A self-fulfilling prophecy.
And in these unstable environments, the child often falls into a role reversal.
I think I know this one. They become the little parent.
Yes. They feel compelled to comfort or stabilize or care for the traumatized parent. They take on an adult weight that is absolutely not theirs. And this profoundly impacts their sense of self and their ability to trust intimacy later on.
I think we all recognize that last mechanism you mentioned in the outline, the unspoken rules, these silent, protective behaviors that become family law.
They were survival strategies that were necessary once, but now they're just rigid limitations. Things like, we never trust outsiders.
Or weakness is not tolerated.
We don't show emotion because it invites danger. These are the relational legacy burdens that limit the next generations, even when they're living in perfectly safe environments. The system still believes the threat is active.
Okay, so if these patterns are woven this deeply into our stress genes and our relationship blueprints, how do we find any real freedom?
Yeah.
How do we stop carrying what isn't ours and start, defining our own story?
The healing has to address the pattern at multiple levels: cognitive, systemic, and energetic. We can't just talk about the problem. We have to go to the source where the fear began.
So where do we start?
We can start with an approach from internal family systems, or IFS.
For anyone not familiar, IFS sees the mind as having different parts or subpersonalities. How does that help us with an inherited burden?
So the critical first step is compassionate inquiry. Instead of fighting the fear, you approach it as a part of you that's trying to protect you.
So you talk to it.
You talk to it. And the core question you ask it is, where do you come from? Or maybe, did you receive this fear from someone else in my family?
And what happens?
The instant intuitive response you get often bypasses all your cognitive defenses. It reveals the root cause, linking your distress back to an ancestral part that's carrying that specific pain or belief.
So if I ask my intense fear of failure where it came from, and I get an image of my grandfather struggling after the war.
Exactly. That suggests your part is carrying his burden, not a personal one of yours. You're offering that part compassion and acknowledging that it took on this job before you were even born.
And releasing the burden is about giving it back.
It's about giving that weight back to the lineage metaphorically, with respect,
Right.
and then stepping back into your own adult role.
Okay, that handles the internal shift. But to address the systemic flow of the whole family, we look at something called family constellations. This can sound a bit abstract, so how can we make it more tangible?
Right. Think of your family as a house with really complicated plumbing. If the pipes are clogged or broken in the basement, the pressure backs up through the entire system.
That makes sense.
Family constellations works on the principle that difficulty persists because of blockages or violations of the, quote, orders of love in the family system.
The orders of love, what are they?
There are three main ones: belonging, order, and balance. Belonging means every single member has a right to be seen, even the excluded, the forgotten.
And if they're not?
When someone is excluded, a later generation will often unconsciously manifest their problem or repeat their fate just to give them a voice.
Wow.
Then there's order, which means those who came first have precedence. Children who try to parent their parents violate this order, and they take on a weight that isn't theirs.
So it's about restoring the correct order.
Yes. By acknowledging the fate of your ancestors and accepting your place as the child, you allow the flow of love and strength to resume, but without that heavy burden attached. You unhook yourself.
That makes profound sense. Okay, finally, we need some practical tools to actually change the wiring.
Yes, tools for the cognitive and the energetic levels. On the cognitive side, cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, is essential.
I think most people have heard of CBT.
For inherited fear, it's about challenging the inherited survival software. It helps you identify those automatic negative thoughts, the "you are never safe" scripts, and replace them with realistic thoughts based on your actual current reality.
And that gradually calms the system down.
It reduces the stress hormones flooding your system. And for the energetic components, some approaches focus on releasing trapped emotions, like the concept of the heart wall.
The heart wall, what is that?
The concept describes this negative energy accumulated from past trauma, whether it's personal or inherited, that the subconscious creates as an energetic shield around the heart.
So it's protective.
It's protective at first, but eventually it blocks your ability to give and receive love, to feel joy, to find success. Releasing those layers of trapped emotions can lead to sudden, significant improvements in really entrenched issues like depression or self-sabotage.
So you can finally dismantle those old self-protection mechanisms.
Exactly.
What we've learned today, I think, is that the profound, confusing pain we carry so often holds the stories and the survival requirements of those who came before us. By understanding both the biological priming of our stress system through epigenetics and the relational patterning of emotional inheritance, we gain the clarity we need to finally set that weight down.
And this is the most powerful shift in perspective, I think. Ancestral transmission includes not just the wounds, but also profound gifts.
Right.
Resilience, innovation, a huge capacity for love, inherent strength. That was all passed down the line too. So healing the trauma within yourself is not just about stopping the suffering.
Way more than that.
It's about claiming your freedom and strengthening the gifts that were always waiting for you. It's a gift of lightness to your entire lineage, past and future.
So if your persistent illogical fear is simply a messenger telling you about a wound from generations past that needs acknowledgement, then what is the inherited strength that has always been waiting for you to reclaim it and to define your own path forward? That is something truly worth exploring.